Candidate for superintendent position, Robert Al Griffin. And Dr. Griffin, we're going to give you about 3 to 5 minutes to introduce yourself and give us your introductory remarks. Oh, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Again, I forgot to allow the board to introduce themselves. My name is Johnny Moss. I'm board chairman.
My name is Brenda Opamanu. I'm the vice chairman of the board, and I represent District 2.
My name is Danielle Wooten, and I represent District 1 of the Selma City School Board.
My name is Dr. Tanya Miles, and I represent District 4.
My name is Phyllis Hauser. I represent District 3 of the Selma City School Board.
Okay. So, Dr. Griffin, take 3 to 5 minutes to introduce yourself.
Good evening. I hope my voice is clear to everyone. Is just about the right volume, a little closer? Okay, thank you. My name is Al Griffin, and I was born and raised in Lineville, Alabama. It's in rural Clay County, Alabama. And I come from a family of educators. My mother's a retired teacher. And, both of my brothers were teachers, and they were significantly older than I. In fact, when I was in the 7th and 8th grade, I actually had my own brother as a teacher. He still lived at home. That was interesting. But as I got older, I became very interested in FFA and athletics, and I was in the Beta Club. So I go on to Auburn University, and I major in agri-science education, and I taught it for several years. And in 1999, I moved into school administration, and I served both in administration and agri-science education in 2004. At that point in time, I was selected as a career tech director for the Pike County and the Troy City schools. They split a career tech director. That was quite a challenge. And I also worked with federal programs. And then from that point, I served as principal at Goshen High School. And in 2010, I was selected superintendent of education in Demopolis. And I'm married to a lady in the back there, a lovely lady, Natalie, and she's raised locally. And so in 2015, we had a little miracle come our way. The other children were grown, and so what I did in Demopolis, I retired. We'd be in one location and have some help with the little one. And since then, I filled in part-time at a couple of places. I did some accreditation visits, and I work in post-secondary education now. I have an excellent working relationship with Selma City Schools. Number one, they partner with us with the post-secondary institution that I represent. But in addition to that, serving as superintendent in Demopolis and even having a home here concurrently while I was superintendent there, I made a lot of great friends here, a lot of visits, and I'd pray something I'd prayed about for a long time. I told my wife, I said, if this position comes available again, I said, I know that I possess the knowledge and skill sets to make this school system successful. And I just thank you tonight for the opportunity. I thank everyone for coming despite inclement weather. And I look forward to our meeting. And that's the story about me. I have an excellent work ethic. I'm dedicated. I'm loyal. And I will give everything I have for the children of the school system. I assure you of that.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin. What is your concept of the relationship which should exist between the superintendent and the Board of Education? And what would you do to ensure a mutually satisfactory working relationship?
First of all, the Board of Education, the board, you set the policy. And it's my job to administer it. And I will administer it consistently. When it's time for new policy, we have to update policy. I just want to make sure we do what is legal. I would appreciate some input on some collaboration with our board attorney. And I know she'll collaborate with the School Board Association as well. As far as I want to keep an open line of communication with you. I want to develop a community that fosters education. I want to have, in addition to a working relationship with you as a whole, I want to strive to develop an individual relationship with you. I'm going to have an open door policy. I want you to feel comfortable approaching me and coming to me. In my previous position, I had a board member of the week every week. You knew when your week was coming, and on a day that week, if it worked in your schedule, and I know many of you are busy, but Thursday was typically the day we tried to do it, is we're going to go have lunch at one of the schools that you pick. And I never have any input, well, let's go to such school. I always drove, I got in the truck, and I said, where are we going? You know, so where'd you go last week? I said, that doesn't matter. I mean, I want to know where you want to go. And so, and that every Friday you'll get a bulleted Friday report from me with the events that had occurred this week, upcoming events. Of course, you'll know the date of the board meeting. It's the upcoming week of the board meeting. I'll have that down, or a call meeting. But I'll give you a bulleted list of just little insiders that are going on within the school that'll be a point of interest to you. And I know the board that I worked for previously, they really did appreciate that. But ultimately, I mean, we have to work together and collaboratively and do what is in the best interest of students. And you'll find as superintendent that I will do that.
Mr. Coleman, can you turn the mic up a little bit on Dr. Griffin, please? Dr. Griffin, I'd like to know, what do you consider to be your greatest strengths for this position and your weaknesses?
My greatest strength, am I too loud? Okay, thank you. My greatest strength is successful experience as a school superintendent. And my weakness is I take things to heart. When a student has failed, I take it to heart. And my wife will tell you, she's sitting back there, I probably go over in my mind a little too much sometimes. But that's a weakness. But my greatest strength is I bring you experience in this position, and not just experience, successful experience.
Given your research of Selma City Schools, what innovative strategies and approaches will you employ to increase student achievement, quality of education, facilities, and effective use of funding? What does this plan look like? What will the proposed outcomes look like for Selma City Schools?
Excellent question. As I did research on the school system and I visited today, I saw a lot of good things occurring. And then as I looked at the data charts, I saw that the in need of support percentage is probably a little higher than you would like. In my previous position, I had significant success at having increase in academic achievement and students reaching a level of mastery. And there's several ways to look at it, and I certainly enjoyed riding with you today, Mrs. Wooten. And I saw a lot of good things going on. And when I become superintendent, I'll have to continue that evaluation. Is some things that I see. I saw a lot of employees working hard. But when you see teachers working hard, are we really breaking the data down correctly? I'm going to make sure that we get the data, we dig down to the individual level so we're reaching the individual student. You have to make sure that the teachers are on pace with the pacing guides, where they're at and with checkpoints throughout the year. I had several principals mentioned that to me today. You have to make sure it's being done correctly. In addition to working hard, you have to work smart. And another thing that you need to do is, okay, we went from the ARMT, the Alabama Reading and Math Test, to ACT Aspire, so now we're going to Scantron, and I expect that'll be a 1-year plan, and we'll move to something else. But what you have to do is you have to make sure that the teachers, when they're assessing the students, they're presenting the information in the same format that they're going to be tested on your high stakes assessments. You make sure that at least 30% of the in-house assessments that the teachers presenting, that they're presenting it in a way that they will be tested on the high stakes assessment in the spring. And then another is you have to make sure that the level of rigor is there. In my previous position, they were not at a level they needed to be. When I arrived, I said, we're going to raise the bar. And they're like, we can't even clear this hurdle. How are you going to do that? But by raising the bar, the level of expectation increased, and we had significant success. And then you talk about an approach. You know, you mentioned an approach, and I understand that there's a strategic plan for the school system, and that's good. And I want to reconvene that strategic plan committee. And let's make that a living and a working document. It's not something, okay, we've got this done, let's put it in a folder over here, we're good for the accreditation visit. And I, like everyone else, I mean, you're guilty, well, put a check by that one, what's next? But I made sure as superintendent that the strategic plan, when I got there, they did not have one. It was never not right on my desk, and at every administrator's meeting we opened it up. That was the last line item, so we could see if we're clearing the benchmarks. And when I left, I took a lot of pride. I had a check by everything, and I was really, really proud of that. And what the strategic plan is, it's just a living document that needs to be utilized, and it sets forth with goals, objectives, the time frames, and benchmarks where it is that we want to go. I know today I saw a school, can't remember which one, it went from 77% of the students in need of support in math at a specific grade level down to 74. I told the principal, I said, you should celebrate that. And I know you want to move that further. And my experience, I can honestly say I have successful experience in moving that in need of support further down. And I will show you that periodically. Good question.
Dr. Griffin, talk to us about your approach to student discipline.
I know an F is bad in school, okay? But 3 F's. And 3 F's would be really bad, right? But firm, friendly, and fair. You have to make sure that you're consistent. Adhere to the code of conduct. The punishment needs to fit the crime. And make sure when it comes to each year that you review the code of conduct, you bring in get the teacher's input, the administrator's input, the board's input. If you have a community forum, there's questions about the code of conduct. Before we approve a draft for the next year, let's make sure that we've covered the areas of concern. And because once you put it out there for the year, and I know you've already put it out for 17, 18. I mean, it's kind of hard. Like if something comes up in November, we need to amend it right quick, and you have to send a letter out to the parents, and you want to make sure that it's correct. and so it's always a working document. And with devices like cell phones, that's always changing. What different problems you can have with technology related to student discipline, but consistent, firm, friendly, and fair, and make sure that you have everyone, all the stakeholders have input.
Dr. Griffin, can you describe your thoughts regarding citizen participation in school matters? And how would you keep the community informed about their school?
Community engagement is essential. And I know that the School Board Association does a good job of training school board members on that, and it ends up over with the Superintendent's Association as well. Number one, I mean, we're living in a high-tech world to keep the website current. As superintendent in my previous position, I had community forums where I would just open it up on a Saturday afternoon, and we had a couple during the week, and people would come and express their concerns, and I'd have my computer up, I'd have it moved from my office hooked to the smart board, and it didn't matter. They may say, how come the middle school has 42 teachers? I'd simply pull my foundation program up and say, here it is, here's how they're funded. And it's just, a lot of times it was very informative, and it really helped ease people's minds. Sometimes people scratch their head and why did they do that? I mean, we understand, like for example, in 2011, when they raised the divisors, you say the word divisor, I see you all nodding your heads, you know what they are, but those people in the audience may not know what we're talking about. You know, I went from 148 teaching units to 129. That didn't bode so well, and so you have to really communicate that properly. Make sure when it comes to that strategic plan I talked about, make sure that you have, you know, members of a broad base of the community, business and industry, have them on that strategic plan. You want that input. And in my application, I mean, I would like to do a state of the schools address at the city council, and I want to be visible and approachable. And I keep saying open door policy, but that's for you, that's for everybody. And when I was superintendent in my previous position, my door was never shut, it was open. And I wanted for everybody to realize that you could come see me.
Dr. Griffin, what would you do if the board disagreed with a policy you believe to be educationally sound?
That's a good question. The board sets the policy, so I guess it obviously would be a situation where, board, we need to review this policy. I'm going to collaborate with our board attorney, number one, and then let's see if, first of all, is the policy, if whatever amendment, because the board sets the policy. I'm going to administer the policy that you approve and pass. But when it comes time to amend one, let's collaborate with our board attorney. Let's make sure this amendment is legal, and then let's make sure it's in the best interest of students. I mean, I will adhere to the policy, and let's just make sure it's legal. Make sure it adheres to the state code of Alabama, and definitely if there's any concern. And you know, sometimes when you amend a policy, you know, you need to allow it needs to sit for 30 days. You know, when the public has a chance for public input, and if they have to leave it to be read, you know, and you'd be surprised. I mean, when we had policy amendments and we'd have it out in the boardroom, there are a few people from the public that come by and read it, and what the new version is going to be. And we just want to make sure it's acceptable and ultimately if it's in the best interest of students. But I'm going to work with the board, and if there's something you have a concern about, I might need to know it.
Dr. Griffin, what are the elements for an innovative educational program? And the second part to that is, how would you evaluate such a program?
Looking at a successful program, number one, you need a well-trained teacher who has ample planning time and the supplies that she needs. You need a safe, structured, quality learning environment. Need a happy environment, comfortable. You need sound leaders who are working collaboratively with the central office staff and the board to make sure that we're providing the type of environment that children need. And when it comes to the instruction, I mean, we want to make sure that you have data-driven instruction. When I look at a successful classroom, I walk in, and first thing I want to see is when I'm doing my walkthroughs, and I do a lot of them, by the way. I sit down in the classroom, and first thing I see, I I want to see a bell ringing exercise. You know, we're coming in. Let's do a bell ringer, and then of course you have your lesson. And I like to see, you know, smooth transitions during the instructional time. I like to see a pupil-centered classroom. That's where the students are talking about 50% of the time, instead of a teacher-centered classroom where the teacher does 85% or more of the talking. And of course, then at the end, I want to see a closer, is what I like to call it, or a lot of people call it, it's your exit slip from class, you know. And I like to see the bell ringer and the closer exercises. They don't have to be tied to today's lesson. They can be tied to one of the objectives from Scantron, just as to make sure it's just that little bit of extra practice. And then I think you mentioned in there the second part of that question was, can you get the second, is it okay for her to read the second part of the question again? I believe I remember it, but I'd like to hear it again.
The second part was, how would you evaluate such a program?
When it comes to evaluating, I mean, you do regular walkthroughs, and then an observation, you walk by, so that's just a snapshot. You know, you're taking a look at what's happening, like today was a snapshot for the educators in the room. I saw most of you today. And then evaluation is an actual formal visit, you know, where you're using the Teach Alabama, the Lead Alabama data, and you want to make sure you go through it and do your checkpoints, and then develop a professional development plan from that collectively with the teacher. You know, and I'll do the same thing for the principal. I'm not going to go back to my cave and create a professional development plan and bring it to the principal and say, here, sign it. No, we're going to sit down collectively, agree. I mean, what are some areas that we need to work on here? I mean, here's what I'm seeing. I mean, what are some areas you see in yourself? Because we never arrive. Everyone can improve. And this board will evaluate me. And I want you to collectively work with me and tell me, okay, where can I improve? Because we never arrive. And I'll be fair with the evaluations, and I want what's best for the students, I promise you that. That's okay, I need a water break anyway.
Given your research of Selma City Schools, what are the top 3 priorities to produce measurable outcomes in student achievement, quality of education, facilities, or effective use of funding? Give us examples of growth you've seen in your experience and proof points.
Number 1, and I want you to know, I want to brag on you and everybody in here, I saw some safe, clean schools today. But safe schools has to be number 1 priority. Is those people at Columbine and Sandy Hook, there's no way they saw it coming, did they? So you always have to be on guard for that. So student safety has to be first. Number 2 is going to be academic accountability. We're going to have data-driven instruction. We're going to make sure that we're aligned with the pacing guides at checkpoints throughout the year. We're going to make certain that the level of rigor is at the level it needs to be. We're going to raise expectations. And we're going to make certain that we're going to review teacher assessments and worksheets and the work that students do. We're going to make sure that we're presenting that the way that it's tested as well. Not totally, just about 30%. Just to make sure that we are presenting it the way that it is tested on the high stakes assessment in the spring. And I know I mentioned data-driven instruction a minute ago, but I want to make sure that the teachers are able to get, analyze, attain data to a point that they can teach and remediate students at an individual level. And I promise you, you'll have success doing that. Number 3 is going to be funding. Funding has always been an issue. It's been a real issue since fiscal year 2012. I see a few heads nodding out there. when they raised the divisors. When they raised those divisors, not only did you lose teaching units, you lost the other current expense money that went along with it. So I'm going to be a good steward of our money, and I'm going to work hard. I'm an excellent grant writer. I'm going to work hard to find other avenues of money to offset the losses that we're still trying to overcome through the foundation program. I still see more heads nodding out there. So I had a lot of success with that, and I'll go over that in a little bit. But those are the top three, and those are the ways that I do it. But back on number one, providing a safe school, just make sure there's ample training for the staff. I like the security guards. You have the metal detecting checkpoints. Those are all good things, okay? But you get inside, I felt so safe there today, but it's like I said, you go back, those people Sandy Hook, they didn't see it coming, did they? And so you have to have a safe school. Good question.
Dr. Griffin, what do you see as the superintendent's role in budgeting and fiscal management when it comes to the board, the administrative staff, and the faculty?
When it comes to budgeting, number one, I mentioned a minute ago, I'm going to be a good steward of the monies, but when it comes time to set up the budget, I'm going to collaborate closely with my CSFO and the board. And of course, you also have CNP, you have maintenance, you have the principals at each school. And everybody has a wish list. I mean, we're going to have to take a wish list and needs assessments and prioritize. Okay. And we're not going to be able to give everybody everything immediately, but we know they need it. We're going to have to do a facilities assessment. You walk through where the greatest needs of repairs at. So we got the needs assessment, the facilities, and another thing, we want to look at the type of educational programs that we want. I was with a board member today. So I guess everybody probably knows which one I rode with, but we kept talking about career academies and like magnet programs and unique type programs that meet the need of the community and business and industries. If we want those types of programs, what's not available and where you could actually apply for grants, let's put a line item in the budget to help build and sustain something like that. And as in my previous life as a career tech director, we did a business finance academy, we had a culinary arts, ag academy, and an industrial maintenance academy. Some of it was grant funded, but we knew in the budget we had to sustain it. And so we made sure there's a teacher in the ETF. I mean, it's easy to, when you're applying for a grant, it's easy to say, sure, we'll sustain it. You just have to tell the number of teaching units that you earn through the foundation program. Say, well, if you're earning 185 teaching units, one of them is going to be a teacher in that program, and at all costs, we're going to keep that unit there. So, and it's really good. That's a very innovative ideas. I really enjoyed the conversations I had today with a board member about those types of the desire to have those types of programs.
Dr. Griffin, what are your ideas about parental involvement in bridging the gap between home and school? And what methods do you suggest in accomplishing it?
Between home and school, parental involvement is essential. I was at one of the schools today and they had a parent work area. I was very impressed. I cannot remember which school it was at where the parents could come in. It'd be nice if each school had something like that. Open line of communication with the parents and the teacher. I know teachers have all they can do. They're overworked already. You have to realize the teacher is the first, that is the person who has the daily rapport with that student. So hopefully the teacher can maintain, we'll encourage that they can maintain a working relationship and an excellent open line of communication with the parents. Something I did at Demopolis, and I can't say that this was all my idea. I was sitting at the table where we created the idea, though. When I was in Pike County, having trouble with parental involvement. Teachers have 187 work days and 180 of it are instruction. We took one of the work days and cut it in half. And on the day that report cards go out at the first 9 weeks and the third 9 weeks, we had a conference day. We had regular school until about 11:30, and then we got out and let teachers go have a long lunch, come back, report back about 1:30 or 2, and they were there until 7:30 p.m. that night, and the parents come to pick up the report cards. And you do that at the beginning of at the end of the third, at the end of the first and the end of the third, is that way before the end of the semester when the grade is permanent, here it is. If by chance somehow the parent was just not exactly sure what was occurred, you've intercepted it. Plus it's also a good time to make sure that that you're developing and that rapport and continuing to grow that relationship. And PTA meetings are essential. Want to have an active PTA. And I noticed during the signs today, I know the gentleman who drove me around today was very kind. He and I sort of had a little chuckle today. I know the Title I meetings are coming up at schools. And I said, well, if they have a child at 3 different schools, which meeting are they going to? So like, well, just don't go to any of them. So that's one way of looking at it. But at that conference day that we talked about, that's where we had our Title I meeting too. The required. We had good attendance at that. People would actually come and sit down, especially when you put a little food out there for them to eat. So those types of things, that had a lot of success with that throughout my career. And I can tell you that, when it comes to the superintendent and the board, what can we control? When I did my dissertation, I learned the difference between an independent variable and a dependent variable. A dependent variable is something I can control. An independent variable is something I can't control. But dependent variables we can control the quality of the teacher we put in the room, the quality of the leader we have leading the school, and we can make sure we provide a safe environment and supplies they need. But when it comes to independent variables, there are some things with relationships between the parents and the children. I saw a principal struggling today with a child who was having a meltdown, and it was below the 2nd grade, and that's tough. We don't know what was going on at home before they arrived, but just if parents know that we as the educators in the school system, if we have a deep interest in their child, you will see a positive impact, I can assure you. And they will come to this conference day. And so that would be something when we come to, as superintendent, we come to set the next school calendar. That's something I'd want to present to you most likely, or let's at least talk about it. And so teachers have 2 1.5 days on their contract, but they get out a day earlier. Thank you.
What is the role of the superintendent in stimulating the faculty toward professional growth and self-improvement? Outline the types of programs you feel will provide adequate professional growth and development for the entire staff. How do you determine the needs, and give us examples of programs you have implemented in the past?
It's like I told you, and I'll go over it again before. Number one, when it comes to your professional development, you have to make sure that your staff, especially in the high stakes areas, can break the data down to the individual level. And it's not uncommon to have to bring in experts from the outside at times to assist with that. Picking topics for professional development, the superintendent in the central office, sometimes we're hovering 100 feet over what's going on. I like to send out a survey every year and let the teachers make some suggestions on professional development. Who else knows greater than their need than they do? I like to also go and meet with the principals and pull the professional development plans of each teacher, and let's sit down and start doing a checklist and see which areas are typically occur the most on the standards on the professional development plan, where the most assistance is needed. And as far as activities that I did, is in my previous position there was not a lot of data analysis occurring, and so we had several professional development days in order to make sure that they knew how to read the data. We went over it at the time. It was the ARPT and the Alabama High School graduation exam. So we went over those results. We made sure everybody understood how you read it down to a level, and we had professional development on administering a formative assessment, and I wrote some grants, and we actually had some local money. We brought in some outside experts. I know that at times they were tired of seeing me, tired of seeing other central office staff. We brought in some outsiders, had a new face with a new approach, and that really had a great impact as well. And when it comes to professional development, you always want to make sure that you go over your safety, those types of professional development exercise as well. Make sure the CPR and all those are covered as well. But when it comes to professional development, I want the input of the teachers and of the principals, and I want to hear what the principals have to say, but I also don't want the principals to pull those professional development plans and they say, let's take a look at your staff and just do a checklist of where you're struggling. Your faculty seems to be struggling the most, and we're going to help address it. Good question.
And lastly, is there anything you would like to tell us that our questions did not provide you the opportunity to say?
Yes, I'm going to pass something out. Is that okay? And I knew the meeting tonight would be in the auditorium. I do have an extra copy of this that I'll just leave if anybody from the public wants to look at it. It's just data from my superintendency and throughout my career. It was really a little hard to have had it on a PowerPoint, but I'm just going to leave one at the end of the table, and I know it's late, and I know it looks thick. Don't worry, we're going to roll through it real quick. Just beginning to look at it, you can see in 2009, 2010, that was prior to my arrival, grades 3 through 5. You go across, you look at the first number there, that's the actual percent proficiency. The next number that in parentheses is the number on the ARP. They would give half credit for partial. They'd give you a 0.5 for partially proficient. So the main thing you're looking at is that middle number there. But you can see in 3 through 5 and 11, 12, and 13, you can see there was places where it declined just a little. But you can see, for example, in 2009 on math, we go from 68 in 2013 to 88. That's 20% growth. Third grade reading, it goes from 80 to 82. That's not the kind of growth I wanted, but that's growth. You can see fourth grade, you see that last year, that was the one area, fourth grade reading, where we really struggled. We had a couple of excellent teachers to retire. That was the effect of that. But you can see it was coming back. And then you look at math, 68 to 77, fifth grade, 77 to 87 in reading, 80 to 96 in math, 96%. It goes next page, flipping to page 2. I'll let you look at those on your own. If you look at 8th grade math, that's where we were struggling the greatest. Went from 64 to, look at 2012, went to 97. Going to the next page, you can see I was very proud of that, the Alabama School Journal. We had the 4th highest in 8th grade math, We had the 4th highest scores in the entire state. I encourage you to look at the company we were keeping. Next page, reading. We were 8th in reading. I'll tell you this, according to class at the 2009 conference, 8th grade academic success in math and reading is the greatest predictor of success in your post-academic life. That's whether it be technical school, post-secondary, 4-year college, military, world of work, whatever. The next page, you know, everybody knows in 14 and 15 we went to the Aspire. You can take a look. You can see across the board right there we had excellent growth right there. I know down in the 8th grade we had a serious personnel issue. You can see what one personnel issue down at that bottom will do. You see where it fell 11% from 14 to 15, but it grew everywhere else. And then going to the next page, we're on the exit exam. You can see how we grew the exit exam. We had a lot of students not graduating because they weren't passing the reading and the math parts, especially the math. We grew it. And then the next page, remember in 14, 15, they went to the ACT. You can see pretty well between 14 to 15. They did a good job, had a lot of growth. I want you to know from the exit exam and the ART to the Aspire and the ACT, that rigor was significantly greater. The next, you're going to see some charts. Just look at the graph down at the bottom. I was there from 2010 to 2015. I'm very proud of how that bar went up when you do it, comparing it to the statewide performance. You can see the next page is a middle school. You can see that year in 2012 and 13 there, the excellent growth of that chart at the bottom. I mean, we're outscoring 90% of the schools in the state of Alabama. But remember, the middle school, that's looking at 6 through 8. I know you saw those 8th grade scores, but remember the 7th and the 8th did not have the 4th and the 8th highest scores. But when you're looking at the 3 through 8 segment on accountability, the 8th grade, that is the end of that segment of accountability. So it's not saying it's more important than any of the others, but it's definitely it needs to be the area that have the greatest review and analysis of. And you can see the high school is very proud of that growth. You can see it when they went from the exit exam to the ACT. You see that rigor is sort of why you see it fall. But the next year we wrote a grant and added an AP, and the teachers did the laying the foundation training, so the rigor increased. The next page, it's the graduation rate. They finally hit 90%. I'm so proud of it. But I know from 2011 to 2012, you may not know how significant this is. There's only 2 school systems in the state that this was the case. Between 2011 and 2012, they went from just, okay, the graduation rate is we have 100 seniors the first day of school, 85 get a diploma. Your graduation rate's 85%. They didn't factor in anything else. What a cohort is, starting in 2012, it was for the class of 2011 cohort. You see, the class of 2010 was 2011. That was the year before I arrived. They measured the graduation rate a year in the rear. But my first year as superintendent, we grew the graduation rate, factored it with a cohort. What is a cohort? How many are in the 9th grade versus how many graduate? Accounting for those who move away and those who move in. And only 1 or 2 systems in the state did that 2011 cohort. It actually went up to 89% from 88, back on the scale where it was much easier to have a higher score. I was very proud of that. And you see how that grew. The next page, I'm going to hurry through. I just kind of analyzed a little bit how the losses from fiscal year 2012, how many students we had a loss of students because we had an industry to close, and when you lose units, you lose money. When you lose money, you also lose other current expenses that goes with it. You lose the classroom instruction supply money that goes with it. If you close career tech programs, you lose the maintenance money that goes with it. We understand that, but it just gives an analysis of the enrollment. And the next page, I sort of go over, despite $4 million in loss of revenue during my time there. I was still able to grow the reserves, and it went from $280,000 in the general fund checking account to $1,616,000. I was very, very proud of that. And that was during some lean times, might add. And then the balance of our CDs, our reserves, the board there made me keep a 3-month operating balance instead of one. I had to have a 3-month operating balance. And you can see I grew the CDs almost $100,000. And then we did redeem one CD of $156,000. We had to update some PE equipment. And so you can do a comparison FY12 versus FY 2008. It'll show you how much money was available. The next page, I just put in bold all the different advanced placement options that we created. I tell you, increasing the rigor had a success on academic achievement. And we had dual enrollment as well. We partnered with West Alabama and Shelton. You can see those classes. And then we really grew our career tech programs. I was very proud of that. And then the last 2 pages is real simple. Those are all the grants I received. I wrote them. I make a hobby out of it. If you look on page 2, I believe it's $1,860,735. That was more than $1 million, and they paid me in salary and fringes. So they got me free plus $1 million. And I can tell you, I worked just that hard right here in Selma. And I definitely thank everyone. I thank the board for meeting with me tonight. And I hope you'll take this and reflect on it. I know you're wore down. I know, Ms. Wooten, we've walked half a mile today, and I didn't want to sit and just read this. I told just a couple of minutes. And then I am leaving one right here.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Griffin. Is there anything you have?